gentlemen, let's give it up for this next panel discussion on how voice recognition technology has evolved call centers, moderated by Mr. Abhimanyu Singh and panelists Mr. Suresh Sampath, Mr. P.S. Reddy, Mr. Ajay Chembula, and Mr. Anuj Gupta.
I'm Abhimanyu. I'm the Associate Director for Voice AI at Yellow. Right, so I will move on to the panel introductions also, but before that, the topic of our panel today is how voice recognition technology has evolved call centers. For discussing this, we have a really great mix of industry leaders with us today from varied layers of the call center ecosystem, and we know how big that ecosystem is. Right, so I think before we really jump onto this topic, it's important to understand why we are discussing this. Why is this all of a sudden a relevant topic in 2022, right? I think, and while every technology that's out there goes through evolution as it ages, right? But I think with the whole pandemic that happened, and I think it impacted everyone in this room and in the world, right? I think businesses were also impacted as part of that, especially B2C companies, which strongly rely on their customer engagement to ensure growth, right? So with the pandemic I think businesses had to pivot overnight, and they had to sort of make changes to the way things were being done, because customers had new expectations, customers were reaching out to businesses on new channels. So a radical change was required in the whole contact center space, and I think that's where the whole conversation started and has been continuing with. So with that context set, I think I'll now, maybe we'll go through each of the panels one by one. We'll have a round of introduction, maybe your roles, brief about which organization you work for. Right?
So this is Anuj. So I basically a part of ICCS team. I had strategy for them, and I've been working with different companies. I've been part of FMCG, CD, banking, and other industries. So as she rightly said that I'm a veteran in this field, but not to go by the gray hair, but I think that technology is there, and it is there for a big change, and we look forward to that. But I would just, first, before we just get on to what Abhimanyu was saying on voice, how is it going to change, what AI is going to bring in, let us first understand that how this BPO started in worldwide. Now, if you look at from a BPO perspective, the evolutions of BPO or the origination of BPO started from a cost arbitrage model. And I think so the BFSI, as Sir has been from the banking industry, and I think that the first player in this country to start retail banking was Citibank. And Citi started it, and Citi realized after some time that what is the point in actually having people in-house, compliance issues, other issues, and cost issues. So this outsourcing model started happening in this country. But slowly the telecom sector took it away from the BFSI. We had the subprime happening in 2009, and the telcos were booming. So most of the country thinks that it is the telcos which actually bought in the BPOs. But I think it's still the BFSI, that's the core of the BPO industry. From there, it slowly moved on, and people then started talking about BPM, business process management. So what they said that you look after the business, because as you have better supervisory skills, the BPOs have been dealing with different clients. So because of dealing with different clients, they had a better understanding of how it has to be managed. So the management was shifted to the BPOs, and they said that we outsource it, one from a cost perspective and second from a management perspective also. But I think so the third change, which is going to happen, and we are now into the third stage of evolution, where everybody have started talking about is revenue enhancement and cost optimization. I think so that's the buzzword, and which every organization, whether it is in fintech, it is banking, it is healthcare, retail, any industry you talk about, it is all about revenue maximization and cost optimization. When we talk about, that is where I think the role of AI starts playing in. And here, when we talk from a revenue perspective, how the revenue is going to enhance in the BPOs, or for the customer, rather, I will not say for the BPO from a customer perspective, that one, the costs, the upselling and the cross-selling, what Sir rightly said about a few minutes back, that they have been tracking these calls and how the customer went to a portal and they analyze, and the entire transactional journey of these customers being analyzed, and based on that, the upselling, the cross-selling opportunity have increased drastically, and that is going to be the first thing which is going to happen because of that. The second thing which is going to happen is that the sales conversion percentages on digital and non-digital channels both will enhance. And the third thing which is going to happen is that the net NPS scores will actually go up. And because of the NPS scores going up, the customer retention will be there and the churn rates will actually go down. So I look from a revenue perspective, I think these are three very critical things which are going to happen. Now let's talk about the cost. From a cost perspective, COA is cost of acquisition, which everybody talks about. I think so. The cost of acquisition needs to go down, and it will happen and started already happening. The cost of retention, the cost of servicing, both these things will go down. The cost of servicing, actually, if you look at most of the customers, if you look today, that today repeat, if just we look at one parameter, which is repeat calls. Repeat calls, every customer talks about that we need to reduce repeat calls, we need to reduce repeat calls. Today, most of the customers are into double digits. If this RTS, the real-time speech analytics, can actually help reduce repeat calls from double digit to single digit, I think so that's where major cost savings is going to happen from a customer service. The customer service experience is going to be much better on that front. So this is from a cost perspective. Now, the question comes in that, and which is very relevant, and most of the BPOs ask this question, and where I think so, he also pointed out, and he said that we are actually looting 60% of our costs to the what. So the thought comes to the BPO, what is there for us? Are we going to lose business? Are we going to have less people? And that is where my thoughts on this is no. Because today, most of these I have started thinking that today, whatever customer base a company has, they want to retain it. They want to do upsells and cross-sells on that customer base, increase customer experience on those bases, rather than burn cash and acquire new customers. Because acquiring new customer is always burning cash. And today, any investor also doesn't look at it very favorably. Most of this, whatever has happened in the last few sessions of the stock exchange, on the stock exchange and the markets, people have realized that the way to work is actually consolidate your base. And that is, I think, is most critical, and that is where we should be looking at. For the BPOs, I think that is where the upside is going to happen, because in a few years, or maybe I am not seeing even a few years, I am thinking maybe in 2023, where most of the organization will start talking of AOPs, that since we are partners, so they will tell the BPO that we have them as AOP partners. So as an Axis Bank, he may say, I have a cost of servicing. I have a cost of acquisition, which is X budgeted for the year. And as a BPO, we need to fulfill that. And that is where our yield per employee should go up, because we will be using a lot of technology, lot of AI tools to reduce the number of people, but not from a perspective of reducing, but the volumes will actually enhance. So at one stage, it may seem that number of people are getting reduced, but actually the volumes will enhance. And here, the upside is going to happen from the BPOs. And BPOs which are not being considered very great from an investment perspective will actually become very attractive to the investment world. So I think the BPOs have a very strong point there, and one should look at it from that perspective. But what everybody looks at, and which I was there when I just entered, and there was this question somebody had read about, that how do you do speech and translating it, and a lot of these customer irritations are happening. Because you see, India, the challenge is great in India. India, you have 18 languages. And every 30 kilometers, the dialect changes. Even if you have Hindi, every 30 kilometers, you have a different dialect on a Hindi. So there has to be a lot of big data analysis which needs to be built up. The ecosystems are there. Today, if you look at this, a lot of companies which are there, we have built the ecosystems, but I think the game lies in analyzing the big data, creating the algorithms behind that big data, and enhancing the experience, and that is where we will reach accuracies of about 75 to 80%. Even if we are able to reach 80% plus, I think that we have done a great job. But here the customer, the technology partner, and the BPOs have to work in tandem with each other. And that is where the revolution is going to happen by use of these AI tools. Thanks.
I think, Ajay, we can take that.
I'm coming from First Source. So I own the digital enabled contact center on the First Source side. And my responsibility is to go back and integrate new partners, bring into the current ecosystem of things, and then go back and see what value addition can be done to my customers. That's my role. In terms of my exposure, I have around 19 fairly product-based companies and a little bit of service. So I've worked with Oracle, Verizon, Ericsson, so a mix of all the product companies, basically. So that's my experience, and that's where I come from.
Yeah, so Ajay, before we move on to Suresh, right? So one question, right? So while we discuss about the evolution of contact centers, what do you feel like if I have to sort of say the top thing in your mind from an improvement perspective, right? What needs to be brought in legacy contact centers, or the challenges that people are facing with legacy contact centers? What would you say there?
So I think we should look at this as a evolution of technology. Like for example, if you look at traditional applications, web applications, or any of those applications, there used to be a static application. Some static, we went to 2-layer, from 2-layer to 3-layer, the MVC pattern. But now we have come to microservices. So similarly, what is happening with the contact center also is we have channels built in. These channels have been built in over a period of time. Like we had a need for voice, so we built a voice channel. We had a need for WhatsApp, we built a WhatsApp channel. We had a need for SMS, or we had a need for a web chat. All of those channels were built in. But the true improvement or the actual user experience will come in when you're able to collate all those and then make an omni-channel experience of it, where if I am complaining, if I've sent an email marking a complaint, and if I'm calling back for that, the customer or the associate or the bot should be able to get that context and then get that going. That's where I think the true value comes in. And that's where we should go back and evolve.
Yeah, just tick marks across all these channels maybe is not good enough moving forward,
Yeah,
right? As in,
yes.
you need to provide a unified solution from a customer perspective as well as from a business perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So yeah, Suresh, now on to you. As in, like,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Interesting perspectives from the way technology has evolved, especially listening from someone who has been from an era where contact centers themselves have evolved rapidly, in fact, more so in the last 2 years. The degree of product adoption, the degree of voice technology adoption has been very, very interesting in the last 2 years. Again, necessity is the mother of all inventions. Demonetization kind of helped the UPI adoption in this market. A learning curve or an adoption curve which would have taken at least 8 to 9 years in this industry. With demonetization, it hardly took about a year, year and a half. So again, connecting it back to necessity and the inventions. The voice technology, the way in which the adoptions have happened, the innovations have come up in the last 2 years, is similar on the same lines of what we observed in demonetization. Except the difference is, voice technology, we had the participation from players across the globe because this pandemic had hit everyone. The only mode of conversation was either through chat, email, or through voice, and voice being the most comfortable one. Right? Look at the way the technology has evolved now. 3 years ago, if I had mentioned that there is a possibility to really audit 100% of your calls, a lot of questions would have come up on the implementation. Today, these solutions are off the shelf. Right? Imagine we had a problem statement where we used to ask the same customer who has experienced our service another rhetoric stating, how was our service? Right? So it's a pseudo question stating, we really don't know how we have serviced you. With voice technology coming in, with sentiment analytics coming in, soon after the call is done or during the call, the contact centers really know how well did we serve or how short we were in terms of servicing our customers. Right? In those days, only measuring metric of contact centers were data-driven logs that we used to get from our telecom operators. Today, if there is a possible repeat call that can happen in a call, we'll get to know about it right during the call or after the call. That's how much accessible this technology has made. So with this advent, what really happens is our measurement systems really get strong. And we all know what is measured is what is managed. In our industry, the kind of features, the advantages this voice technology currently offers, and the kind of roadmap I've been hearing from across players in this room, this industry will completely evolve into a shape which we can really be proud of in terms of making sure machines taking care of interactions which are repetitive, predictive in nature, and humans really supporting interactions where it really requires empathy-driven responses and more complex responses. So I am Suresh. I head the transformation division in Fusion BPO services. I implement these products and gain benefits to our organization and our clients. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. So just Suresh, a small thing which I just wanted, you talked about that the journey has started. Do you think that this journey, how long will this journey take? That this transformation which has started happening?
Well, I'm afraid there's no definitive answer to it. All I can say is it has begun even before pandemic. Pandemic has accelerated the adoption, implementation, and innovation. How long will this continue? As long as it gets. So it's a continuous cycle, right? So one of the use cases that we heard from the banking example is we used to have IVRs which used to have a long transfer time or a traversing time to an agent, right? This problem was well known even before pandemic, right? So we're looking for a solution to solve this problem. Voice
Basically,
technology
you're saying that it's
enabled
going to
it.
enhance customer experience because of the time taken on the journey will be much lesser. Is that what your thoughts are on this?
It'll be a very limited or a narrow frame of question or a narrow solution to think on those lines. But rather what I would say is these technology solutions will continue to solve problems. With every problem that is being solved, there's a new problem that comes up, and that new problem gets addressed with the same technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. That's
Yeah, so like I actually love your example and the similarities that you bring, that you brought in, right, with that demonetization and how UPI was a trigger point for that, right, and how it's similarly with pandemic and how this happened. So then the next question comes in, right? Now the pandemic, like assuming we are in the post-pandemic era, right, when this new normal, do you feel that, like, and I think you are the exact right person for this question, which is because you're the global head of transformation, right? So do you feel that there will be this continued focus on digital transformation from a business perspective moving forward? Because pandemic is now gone, right?
Hey, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, a straight answer to your question is the investments the organizations will do, specifically in adopting these technologies, implementing it, seeing results, and discovering what more problems can be solved. The degree of it will go much higher. For example, look, Paytm existed even before demonetization. The utility of Paytm, I'm using this brand Paytm purely because we all remember that front page advertisement of this organization really capitalizing on the demonetization event that happened. So the organization existed, their growth acceleration happened once this thing was announced, right? With this pandemic, you know, we have tasted the success of what voice tools can provide us. Chat, it was always there. You know, there's a study from Stanford that says that people are 3 times more comfortable conversing than typing and chatting, right? And with that in perspective, this technology is here to stay, and we are only, you know, capitalizing on at least 3 to 4% of what this tool can do. All of us who have implemented voice technology really know this is not an off-the-shelf product. It requires a lot of iterations. The iteration cycles are far more than off-the-shelf products. Even today, we struggle to solve the problem of empathy, sympathy, and those human-related aspects in the contact center. The next step is for voice AI organizations to solve this problem, understand the intent from the customer, respond accordingly. Somewhere similar to a human, at least in a top set of top call drivers that we keep talking in our call center use cases.
Yeah.
don't you think?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Don't you think that you see India being a very diverse country? So somewhere you see if you look at North and you go to Punjab and Haryana, you have a very loud voice, and if you go to Assam, you have a very soft voice. So whatever interpretations which are happening through this intelligence could actually give you very different results. somebody, because in the north, if you are excited and you want to buy a product, your volumes are actually high, the pitch is high. And if you go to Assam, it is absolutely the reverse. If you are high, then maybe you are you're not happy with the product. So how does this technology will help in solving this problem?
Oh, it's a fantastic question. Specifically with voice technology, there are two aspects, right? One is capturing your regular expressions, the word that is being said. The other are voice markers. In technical terms, you call it pitch, frequency, or phase that you talk about, right? There are speech-to-text organizations which are working on different voice markers, right? Pitch of the conversation really defines. Again, you'll have a map that'll understand the cultural aspect of the demography or answering those questions. Not all the questions you asked, we have an answer today. But that's the future of voice tech.
Yeah. So, okay.
Solving those problems is the future of voice tech.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think this was in one of the talks earlier in the day, right? I think this was one of the talks was around how Indian speech is going to get evolved. How is that going to play a part in this, right? I think the similar concerns were brought up there also around different every 30 kilometers, different language, right? So I think, yeah, so first problem to solve there is to ensure that we're getting the right content in. I think the next iteration to that would be what Suresh just talked about, right?
Yeah,
Getting the right sentiments in.
absolutely. What is rightly said, and you are also saying, Abhimanyu, is that the content and the data which is there, that has to be captured, it has to be analyzed. A lot of things have to go into data analytics, and then based on that data analytics, we have to build the system behind it. So that it starts recognizing the right things.
Yeah.
And that is where my question was there to him, was that how far do you think we are from there? I think that some of the companies in this country have been doing it. One telco I know about who has been doing it for a number of years. They also say that they have been doing this for about 4 years, but they say that they are at about 87% accuracy, which may be there or not be there. But lot of the other industries have just started venturing into it. They started just thinking about it. Maybe Axis Bank is one of the players which have started much earlier. SGFC started thinking about it. All of the other companies, even in healthcare, a lot of companies have started thinking about it. But I think that there is lot of knowledge which needs to go into the system to actually come in and be there, where you can actually predict the consumer behaviors to that extent where it can result in good customer experience and also help you in improve your, whether it is in sales or whatever numbers we are talking about.
Yeah, I think a point well made, right? I think there's always room for, and significant room for improvement, especially in Indian languages, the ASR around that. But I think when it comes to providing a solution, right, because it's always an evolution, you never have an ideal product to start with. I think what we were discussing maybe some time back was if a customer is talking to a voice bot, right, and the voice bot is not understanding what the user is saying, there are two ways you handle it, right? One is that you keep asking the user, can you please repeat this? Can you please repeat this? And the user gets irritated and hangs up the call. But a better way to do this would be that if the bot is not understanding, it has the capability to transfer it to a human agent. Maybe it'll ask it twice and then say, okay, looks like there's some issue and I'm not able to understand you. Let me transfer to your human agent so that they can take the call forward. So I think while we wait for the technology to correctly evolve to a place where we don't really have to rely on any other support systems, I think we have to handle it with such features like this, right?
Anyway, as you say correctly, there's a lot of irritation which builds into the system because you may be talking of something and the bot may start replying something else because he doesn't understand, because as he also mentions that कि बंगाली में बराबर बोलते हैं और मराठी में कुछ और बोलते हैं और अगर आप दिल्ली में चले जाओ तो कुछ और बोलते हैं. So there's a different lingo to maybe the same meaning what we are trying to say. And because of that, it leads to a lot of frustration to the customer that he might be talking of. One of my colleagues, I was just mentioning to Abhimanyu that just yesterday he was telling me that I went and I said credit card. He said yes. And then it took me to the credit card. I said closure of credit card. So it took me to closure of FD. When I said again I said closure of credit card, it took me to a mutual fund. So that leads to frustration. I think so that is where I think so the knowledge has to be built in, and I'm really worried that how fast we can do that. And that is where banks or and other organizations need to work very hand to hand with the BPOs and with the technology companies to evolve that.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, right? Like for any organization to build a product that actually caters to consumers, I think partnership is the best way to go, right? You
Absolutely.
build products with great partners, and that's how you build great products. That's a point well taken. So next, I would like to like to pose this to Mr. Ajay, right? So. Uh, any new solution like voice recognition technology that we're talking about is one of the solutions that will drive the evolution of call centers, right? So any new technology that we pick has to be evaluated on two fronts. One is whether a business will be able to adapt to it quickly, and the other side of it, where the consumer who is consuming that particular technology, are they comfortable using that, right? Because there's no point in me as a bank using a voice bot if my underlying population that I cater to does not know how to interact with the voice bot. Right, so do you feel that there have been any recent changes that drives this motion in both these aspects, from a business perspective as well as from an end consumer perspective?
I think to answer that question, we need to understand the customer behavior which has been happening. So, for example, earlier when we used to go back and design solutions, enterprise had their own ways. They used to say that, hey, I am least bothered about the customer. This is how it's going to work. You have to go back and take it or leave it. Now, but with the evolution of the retail world and with the happenings of the likes and the dislikes of the instant gratitude which you get with the social media platforms and everything, what is happening is the customer or the retail behavior is what is driving the enterprise expectations also. So what needs to happen now is like, no, you no longer can't wait for an hour on a call and say that, hey, I'm trying to go back and solve this problem. Everybody expects an instant gratification. Now, in the same behavior, what you should also look at is the customer behavior. All of us are used to any form of voice assistant, be it an OK Google or a Alexa or a Siri. All of us have used some of these platforms here or there. And that is what is going to familiarize. And they'll look for, like, even if you introduce that technology, the adaptability should not be a challenge. And you should be able to take it and take it forward. So that's how I see, like, both those coming in from an enterprise standpoint and from a customer standpoint. The evolution is already there. And we should be able to go back and adapt and take it forward.
That's a great point, right? The focus from a, like, what drives the business priorities has completely changed, right? With consumers being at the center of it now moving forward. Right, so I think we have been discussing this with Mr. Anuj around, like, voice AI can have multiple like uses, right? While we have been discussing one, like a lot of focus that's been there right now has been more on the consumer facing, right? How will consumers sort of use this? But I think in the near future, I'm talking about 5 years, right, or 10 years even down the line, agents that currently run these contact centers are not going anywhere, right? We are still going to rely on these agents for handling more complex use cases, right? So in such cases, we have to figure out where does voice AI fit into that part of the problem, right? When it comes to helping agents do their job in a better way, in an optimized fashion, right? Maybe the person who is talking to that agent does not even know there is a voice AI solution there, right? But the agent's job becomes better. Do you see any scope of improvement?
I think so. What you rightly said, Abhimanyu, that is the scope. The scope is that when you have this real-time analytics happening, that is where when a CSR is talking to a customer, he knows exactly, is he making a mistake? If it's a troubleshooting, has he missed any step? Because immediately there is something which comes there and he says that you missed this. And that is where the customer experience starts enhancing. If he's doing a upselling or a cross-selling, or there is some word which a customer has used, which actually says that this customer may be looking for a product, immediately that AI tool catches on to it and gives a prompt to the CSR. Look, this is the word, get onto it. He needs a PL, he needs a credit card, he needs an insurance, he needs something else. That is where it will optimize the way the CSR is working. The people in these BPOs will actually start loving their work. There will not be a monotonous kind of a thing which is happening, because you see the BPOs face heavy attritions. Why the heavy attritions? Because it is a very monotonous job. You talk the same few lines on 150 calls in a day. And you do that for 30 days in a month, which is 4,500, and you multiply it by 6, so you reach a number which you actually can't. But if we are repeating the same thing 50 times, we get bored. So these people are doing it for day out and day in. I think that that is where, if that is starts happening through the AI too, that this optimization starts happening to the CSR and he gets knowledge behind it and he is able to do a better solutioning to the customer, do a better sales to the customer. I think that is where the solutioning is, and that is where all of us should look at working. Because that will also not disrupt the BPOs. The people will be there. And India, if you look at it, people want to talk to the CSR. It is not, they don't want to talk much to the bot. After a few, maybe a few lines, maybe the few first sentences, maybe they will go to a bot, but after they want a human voice. We work for a public utility company where we send, when there is a breakdown, I was just telling him that there is a message and there is an app, there is a message through the app and on an SMS which goes to this customer saying that there is going to be a power shutdown between 4 to 5. But still people call up the call center because they want to know, they want to talk. And today, the penetration of these services has happened in the tier 1 and tier 2. We have the major population of this country is in tier 3 and tier 4, which is still not so much technology savvy. So the potentials are huge. I think so we need to optimize the way the CSRs are working in the BPO.
I think fantastic points around it. Now, there is one dimension that I'm sure Anuj is also thinking about it. A lot of these problems are solved by VoiceTech AI in terms of agent quality, how the agent is performing, so on and so forth. The other use case is also capturing customers' voice. We call it in our industry VOCs. And this can become huge input to the product teams in really articulating what the customer is asking, what the customer is expecting. More so because this is predominantly voice of customer and it is unbiased. Olden days, the option of capturing VOC was to depend on an agent to dispose the call the way customer had responded. VoiceTech AI also gives product teams huge amount of data for them to understand how their product is performing in the market. Right? That's another utility that really comes in terms of making sure that we use voice technology to the fullest.
Yep. And actually that reminds me of the point that you had made initially, right? Where like the businesses ask the consumer, how did the call go for a feedback, right? Had I a bad conversation with the business, right? And after some time, if I received an automated notification telling me that looks like you had a bad conversation, one of our representatives will reach out to you. That's such a better, significantly better customer experience than like me asking me what went wrong.
Exactly, being proactive. We know we screwed it up.
Yeah. And this is on 100% of the calls. It's not just on calls where the
it is
customer
on the 100%
feedback.
of all, but again, it depends on the accuracy.
Yeah.
At what accuracy? Maybe you might send a message to a customer, he might be very happy with the call, and you may send him a message that you are not happy. So I think that is going to be the reverse. He will feel unhappy about it, that I was very happy with the call.
Yeah.
Why are you sending me this message?
Yeah.
So I think that the evolution is happening, and we should not just be looking at that on a conclusion that yes, it is really going to change. Yes, it is going to change. But the steps we have to take have to be very cautious. We have to take one by one step rather than just because everybody talks that technology is going to make the revolution. Technology is going to make the revolution. Yes, it is. If you have to reach out to more people, you have to do better service, you have to do other things, you have to reduce your costs. You need to depend on technology. But I think that when technology starts driving you, it's a disaster. When you drive technology, then the results really come out of it. And I think so we should be driving technology rather than technology driving us. That's my point.
Yeah, great point. I think that makes complete sense also, right? I think given the time, we're coming to the end of this panel, right? So I would want to understand from you, we have been talking about how the call center will evolve, what role voice technologies might play. Obviously, there are some concerns around where the technology is right now and what's the correct use for it, right? So let's talk about a little in the future, right? Where, say 2030, 2035. What is your view of when the technology has evolved, right? What will our typical contact center look like, right? Because I don't see agents going away there also, right? Agents are always going to be at the center of the thing. So what do you feel an ideal contact center will look like? What are the features and what do you feel things will be drastically different to what they are right now? And this I'm talking about 2030.
I think so. If you look from a call center perspective, there's not only much of change. You will have the CSR because BPOs is all about people, nothing else. So if the people are not going away, the call center will remain the same. Only thing is that the way they work will become more efficient, become more optimized, and they will BPO today is not considered to be a great job opportunity. I think so in the coming year, ahead with technology driving it, it will be a great opportunity for a lot of people to work around in the BPOs. I think, and that is where the CAGR, which is at about 6% today for the BPOs, that should shoot up. And I think that rather than technology bringing down the numbers, it should actually move the numbers up in 2030 or 35, whenever it is this thing is going to happen.
I think if you were to look at it again, I think everything will be based on the individual user and the personalization which is going to happen. Like the value or the 2030 will be, everything should be instant. Like for example, it should be click to call or click to chat or click to email. And the context of it will be passed across the channels, and the associate will be able to understand what exactly is the problem even before us contacting and then taking it forward. So that's the high level of the future which is going to look like.
Actually, like just before we go to Suresh, right? I think, again, going back to the example, because I really like that example about demonetization, right? Post demonetization, I think people's habit have changed. As in, like, I don't carry cash around, right? I rely on QR codes or maybe any other digital mode of payment. So maybe we will go to a place, right, as these things evolve, where customers waiting on a call will not be a thing anymore, right? That will be something that people get surprised by. Why am I made to wait on a call? So, yes, Suresh, your point.
No, absolutely. I mean, these technology products are here to solve some of the attrition issues that we have been discussing, some of the agent efficiency issues that we have been discussing, some of the consistency in messaging that needs to be given to the customers that we have been discussing. The imaginations can go wild if we forecast the outlook for 2030. With these advanced technology products coming in, we have humongous amount of data in our hand. Today, we have deployed these voice technologies in multiple of our customers. To be very honest, one big problem that we are finding it difficult to solve is how do we consume this data? How do we extract meaningful insight from this data? So this gives a lot of fuel into this data science and engineering kind of domain in itself. Moment the data science and engineering domain evolves, that becomes a feeder for these voice technologies to improve in itself as well. So it's a closed looping that is gearing up today, tomorrow, and the next few years to come.
Great point. I think we are free to open this up for any questions that the floor might have, right? Or I think the point that we wanted to discuss, I think we had a really insightful discussion, especially I think someone with Mr. Anuj's experience. It was like a pleasure to actually have this conversation with him. So any questions the floor has, the panel will be able to take it up right now. Yeah, look like we were quite exhaustive in the way we answered this topic. Yeah. Lunch also plays a role, sure. I think we're good to go. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a huge round of applause for our panelists and our moderator for conducting this very sweet session?